let's do it.
Okay, sorry. I think that's two.
All right. Welcome, everyone. I call to order this Finance Committee meeting for November 9th, 2023. I'd like to acknowledge that we are in the traditional and historical lands of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina Nation, and our closest adjacent neighbors, Stoney Nakoda, comprised of the Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney. We are also in the historic lands of the Métis District Number 4. And the town is committed to working in right relations, and it's something that we have to remember every single day. And it's only in developing that sort of pattern can we actually achieve reconciliation. Yeah. I will now look to approve the agenda for November 9th. Any additions, changes? No. Just before approving the agenda, just on the things that we've requested, would they be coming back at the next meeting then for deliberation? So the fruit trees, the 2.3%?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And then at that point too, anything that anybody has not brought forward could be, today, could be brought forward then. I suspect that we will not need the last one unless we don't get through everything next week, which I'd be surprised about. But anyway, so I will move that we approve the agenda for November 9th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting. All in favor? Carried unanimously. And now we'll move to delegations. Martin, Mr. Bean, you are here to present on behalf of BBRTSC. Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, Mayor Krausert, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to the Finance Committee today and share a little bit on what's happening with Rome and where we've been, where we're going, and the changes that have happened. So just to start out, I'll share a little bit on the services that Rome is providing. I think everybody's pretty familiar, but we're basically now connecting the Bow Valley all the way from Canmore through to Lake Louise, as well as being the general contractor for the on-it service that was running Thursdays to Sundays through the summer from Calgary. So really giving people the opportunity to use transit and not have to drive personal vehicles if they choose not to. And then we have some additional summer services in the park: Lake Minnewanka, Caven Basin, Johnston Canyon, Bow Valley Parkway, and Moraine Lake. This summer we also implemented a trial on a Lake Louise local service in order to allow people that are living in Lake Louise or staying at the hotels in the village of Lake Louise to get up to the lakeshore without having to either walk, bike, or go arrange Parks Canada service from the ski resort. So that was pretty successful in the first summer, so we'll have discussions to see how it goes. Carried about 235 people a day on average through the summer, and only operated from about 9 to 3:30. So as we can see, as transit services begin, people start to get used to it, and once the service is there, people seem to flock to it, and we've seen that in our ridership numbers. It'll be coming up here in a little bit. As you can see, this great picture of Canmore Local Transit, 7 years as of November 1st, so just basically a week ago. And the local transit started in 2016, became fare-free in 2019, and we've seen a lot of success. In 2023, some of the changes that we made put additional hours on both 5C, which goes to Cougar Creek, and 5T, which goes to Three Sisters. We added evening hours to match up the times of the Route 3 from Banff, and just to provide the opportunity for people working in restaurants or working later into the evening to be able to get home until about almost midnight now. Added hours on the weekends this year as well. And basically, it's now a consistent 7-day-a-week service so that you can, you don't have to decide what day it is to decide if you can take transit to work or not. And then ridership. You can see the ridership. When we started out, the report was that we would be getting to about 110,000 riders a year. Well, year to date on Canmore Local, we're at 255,000 as of about a week ago. So people are really using it. If you go past the stops in the morning, the kids are using it to go to school. They're using it if they stay after school to go to extracurricular activities, and it just is becoming more convenient and more easy to use, and that trend is trend's continuing to go up. Some of the challenges that we saw in 2023, schedule adherence would be the biggest ones, with increased ridership, some speed limit changes and vehicular traffic. We ended up making some adjustments to the schedule, so it's not quite as frequent, but it's on time, so people can plan and can use the bus now without getting to the bus stop and the bus is running 12 minutes late. So we're, as I got up here, we're running into a few situations of overload, but not many. We're carrying about 850 people a day. So the schedule adherence, just to illustrate, before we changed the schedule and gave that extra 5 minutes of time for the bus to make its loops, we're around close to 70%. And now since then, in September, these numbers show we're getting close to 90% schedule adherence, and that's adherence at every stop along the route. So it's improved significantly and become more reliable. Overloads are, these overloads are total numbers year to date. So, there's a few, but not very many. So it's not a significant problem at this time. In future years, we're going to be having to add service and go to the bigger buses, especially during peaks, to make sure we don't see a consistent problem with overloads. The Canmore-Banff Regional Service, this year, as approved last year, a third bus was added for peak AM and PM commuter times in 2023, and ridership on this service increased a lot as well. So we're about 775 riders a day on Route 3, 235,000 riders year to date, and projected to be somewhere around 275 by year end. A few more overloads on Route 3, but still not a big issue. And when we do see an overload on Route 3, the service, the next bus is coming in about 22 to 24 minutes. So it's not a big challenge for somebody. If the bus is full, the timing is pretty good, so they don't mind waiting for the next bus. Rome system-wide ridership. Last year, our total for the end of year was our record at 1.652 million. This year, we're at 2.231 as of about a week ago. So we anticipate getting to that 2.5 million rider mark this year. Watch out for a contest coming up in December to guess how many riders are on Rome by the end of the year. Then talking transit requisitions, we are, as service grows, things are increasing. We see the requisition difference of 238,000 in 2024 from previously approved. We're seeing a lot higher costs on our maintenance side. We're also having to do more hiring than anticipated. So there's more training involved. So drivers come, drivers leave. We're at a point in the transit drivers that age, we have a fairly high percentage of our drivers that are over 60 and looking to retire. So as the Canmore local service has grown and as Route 3 has grown, we're seeing drivers retire. Just had a driver resign to move out of the valley, sell their house, buy something in central Alberta. So we're doing more training than anticipated. So that's seeing a change in the requisition. The difference 2025 you can see is a reduction from previously approved. We had money in there for a new route when we were in there, when we put the budget in last year, a couple of years out. We've taken that out pending the results of the Dillon report that Andy and I will be going through over the next few months and determining what we want to present for 2025. Wade.
Mr. Peter, I'm wondering, what does it cost to train somebody, roughly?
So we would be training somebody for a period of anywhere from 3 weeks if they come with a license and some previous experience, to about 6 weeks if they don't come with a license and we get them to the point to get their test. And we're looking probably about $2,000 to $4,000 to train somebody.
I would have thought it was even more than that. Okay, thanks.
No, with us doing it in-house, we're pretty efficient in our training.
Okay.
If somebody went to get their license by themselves, they would, when they MELT, the mandatory entry-level training program was in place from the government, private training school would charge them $8,000 to get their license.
That's what I would have thought, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, awesome.
Do they get paid while they're being trained?
Yeah, we have full pay when they're training. They get a bump when they're finished.
In addition to their salary? Or is
No, two to four would be, yeah, so 2 to 4 would be the trainer
right.
costs.
Right.
Yeah, and then the salary of
Plus the salary
training
while they're
somebody.
not being utilized on a bus. So I would think that that's cost of training as well.
Yeah. Good point. On our, already discussed briefly, but on our maintenance side, we're seeing cost increase due to labor shortages, putting in overtime. Also, parts shortages are costing us due to buses being down. And we end up sending more buses now into Calgary to get repairs because we can't get them done out here. And then huge delays on parts shipping as well. So I think it's a challenge everywhere, but we're definitely seeing it. So upcoming for this year, we have a new service level request in for Route 3 to increase the service for the third bus to include weekends. And our goal is to, as we build service, to have consistent service 7 days a week. Because in the Bow Valley, we're not seeing Monday to Friday commuters like we would at a Calgary Transit or Edmonton Transit. People are having to go to work 7 days a week. So this ask is for the third bus on Route 3 to be on weekends so that we're achieving about a consistent 22 to 24 minute frequency 7 days a week. And the ask here is anticipated to be about $58,000 or $29,000 per community. And then just finally, planning is being finalized for 2024 to start the summer Grassy Lakes route, and that'll include Quarry Lake, Nordic Center, Grassy Lakes, and also travel along Bow Valley Trail. And we're just finalizing the full routing at this point. And then further to that, as I already mentioned, the Dillon report that has just come back will help inform our decisions for future service in 2025. And that was all I had.
Thank you very much for being here and making that presentation. Looking to see if there are questions. Councilor Graham.
I have a couple, if I may. First one, what is the average age of our buses? You mentioned maintenance was starting to creep up. Yeah, what is the average age?
So the buses that primarily serve Canmore were bought for the Canmore local service, so they are 2016. We do have older buses on Route 3, as we have buses that started in 2011. Average age of our entire fleet would be about 7 years.
Okay.
Brought up by the new electric buses that are in place, but
Right.
yeah.
I suppose actually age probably isn't the correct number to be looking at. It's probably more like kilometers,
Yeah, well, and
hours.
yeah, hours or kilometers, depending what route they're doing. So the Route 3 does a high number of kilometers in a day, around 800.
Wow.
And the local routes do about 200 to 225 in a day.
Right. Thanks. And then I'm wondering if you could update us on any sort of conversations happening with the MD as to.
Actually, I have not had any conversations with the MD in about a year and a half. Our last discussions with them were suggesting to them to do a transit feasibility study and determine how they could integrate with Rome if they chose to, and what would be best for for the population base that they have. So I'm not sure where they are at with that, if they're choosing to go ahead or
My understanding
not.
is that they're working with KID to do a report together, you know?
Okay,
And
yeah.
I would think that that's, like, I thought that was actually already underway, so I don't know. Maybe we're gonna get something soon, or hear something soon.
Yeah, and that's along the lines, I had a conversation with KID probably around the same time as they
Right.
were starting to plan some transit services.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I look forward to updates on those conversations.
Other questions? Councillor Faubert.
Thank you, Mayor Krauser. Thank you, Mr. Bean, for your presentation. I have two questions regarding the new route for next year. One, when would we expect the bus for that route? And then two, which might not be your question, is are the bus stops currently being constructed? I think that's an Andy question.
So I will answer question number one. So the bus designated for that route was anticipated to be delivered in April. Unfortunately, the supplier that we are working with, Proterra, declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy about 3 to 4 months ago. I have a stack of papers on my desk about this high. I keep getting mailers about every 3 days. So we're just waiting to find out what happens with them. So it will be delayed, but we're looking at further options to be able to potentially lease a vehicle or work around that, because I know they're going to be delayed till at least mid to late summer on that delivery of that bus.
For the bus stops, Councillor Faubert, the stops are under construction right now. They're prioritizing stops needed to be able to start the route in the spring.
I may have noticed in front of my building a new bus stop, so. I have one other question.
Yep.
Martin, kind of looking at the stats, have you seen any changes in terms of ridership for Route 3 or Route 5 with the introduction of paid parking in Canmore and Banff?
With the services growing, it's hard to attribute it directly to paid parking, but each route is still increasing significantly every year. So, you know, when you look back at the time during COVID to now, we're seeing significant increases year over year. So I would say yes, but it's hard to attribute it directly.
Although it does look like there was a bump in June 2022 on the local route. It goes from 13,000 to 16,000, which is a bigger bump than it took the year before. So it's tough to correlate exactly, but
Yeah,
anecdotally,
I would
we'll
say yes. Yes.
And I'll have one more, which is kind of more like kind of macro future visioning. When I think about where Rome Transit is right now and some of the pressures facing it due to its success, it feels very much like the situation that Canmore has experienced in terms of its business transformation. processes in terms of like you see growth for a number of years and then all of a sudden that growth precipitates a number of other things you need to do that you didn't know you would need to do. How, as an organization, are you approaching planning for the future needs of transit, knowing that, you know, we're seeing, we're at capacity on some routes, and this is a very successful organization. How do we keep growing that?
Thanks for the question. That's something we ask ourselves every day. And we are looking, so one of the things we have done this year is we ventured into the staff accommodation realm. We have purchased a 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom unit close to the hospital. So that's a start there, just for us to be able to get involved there. We're looking at, we have a couple new positions in place for next year to expand our infrastructure and creating a year-round safety and training department with a safety and training manager coming on board for the beginning of 2024. So things like that we have to get a little bit better at looking out more than 1 year and saying, okay, in 5 years, this is where we'd like to be. Studies like the Dillon report for Canmore will help guide us and see where we need to be as far as vehicle purchases. And we've done, over the years, as we've grown, we've looked at what grants are available and planned some of our bus purchases around the available grants. We've got to flip that over and look at what we need and make those decisions and then search for the grants afterwards. So.
Councillor Mott.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks for coming here, Mr. Bean. Back to the schedule adherence, like 88.7%, that's amazing. Is that like within 30 seconds of stated time or within plus or minus 1 minute to get to the stop? Just curious what the metric is for that.
Yeah, so we measure our schedule adherence within 5 minutes.
Okay.
So, but that is, if you looked at route overall schedule adherence, it'd actually be higher than that. This one is schedule adherence at each stop.
Right, okay.
So some of it is we maybe need to adjust the travel time between stops. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think we would, if schedule adherence overall, we're probably close to about 95%.
Okay. And what's the trend with the on-it stuff? Because I know you guys have taken it over a bit more. I'm just curious on that side, where it's going.
Yeah, on-it hit record numbers this year. It carried just over 42,000 people between May and October. Mm-hmm. And it operated, so on-it operated daytime, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we added Thursday evenings this year. So it's been that trend where we started out, it was just Saturday, Sunday, then we added Friday evenings, mm-hmm. and then a couple of years ago added Friday daytime. So as we increase service, the demand increases for on-it. Mm-hmm. Parks had commissioned a study this year, not a study, a survey for on-it passengers, and I think the results have just come back on that, but haven't been analyzed yet, to kind of determine how much of that is induced demand and how much of it is actually taking cars off the road.
Right. What's the price point for on-it right now from, say, Calgary to
$10.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Awesome,
So-
thank you.
$10 one way. And that price hasn't changed since the on-it service started back in 2017.
I would say that, you know, the on-it service has a real potential of paving the way for larger integrated mass transportation between Calgary and Canmore or in the park system. But I also think it's also with no more Greyhound or any of those services, it's a way for locals to get to Calgary as well. And it would be, I'm obviously no longer on the Transit Commission anymore, but it would be my hope that we have the potential to grow that, not only just in the summers on the weekends, but hopefully in the winter, and then longer, you know, fatter weekends, and then hopefully into a full-time service. The beauty of it, of course, is that we're using somebody else's buses, somebody else's drivers. Resourcing all of that is their problem, and it takes stress off your plate. They've also been able to help us when we've had overloads up in Lake Louise. to bring people back into Banff or Canmore, when that service has been oversubscribed up top, so, yeah.
With regards to the audit system, you described the commission as being the general contractor. So who is it that hires the commission? Is that the CRP or?
So the commission is hired by Parks, Town of Canmore, and Town of Banff. So,
Okay.
yeah. So it was Parks is the primary contributor,
Okay.
and Town of Banff contributes, Canmore contributes a smaller amount,
Okay.
and therefore has less
So that was
schedules from
originally,
here.
that was originally initiative of the Calgary Regional Partnership.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, okay. And that's a break-even service then, or how much do we support it?
It's a subsidized service.
Okay.
The subsidy, so the funding was, if I believe, round numbers, 225,000 total was the subsidy.
And then split up between the three?
And Parks contributes 150, Town of Banff contributes 60, and Canmore's 17.5.
Okay. Thank you.
And the other interesting thing on it is we got to kind of middle of August. On it was scheduled to go till September 17th. At the middle of August, we made the decision to extend it until October, till Thanksgiving, and it was basically sold out through those additional.
Within the same budget.
Within the same budget, and that was part of the reasoning was that we had budget availability, so let's expand the service and continue it and see if people would travel.
Councilor Moyle.
I'm not sure if like you'd be privy to this, but is ONIT ever thinking about going from the airport directly to Canmore Banff?
Nothing has been considered at this point.
Okay. Yeah, it's just interesting because there's obviously this parallel conversation with like trains and blah, blah, blah. And I feel this ONIT does all that and for a fraction of the price, and it sounds great, so.
Yeah, I would say with ONIT, there needs to be discussions about how to make it sustainable over the long term. Right now, it's kind of a year-to-year decision as to how much money each council approves. But for ONIT to grow and become 7 days a week, I think it's got to be, there have to be some decisions made.
Right.
And that would then allow the contractor to buy buses to update their fleet to be able to provide service.
So is ONIT a separate entity that we contract through the commissions? That's why they're still called ONIT?
Yeah, so
Could we
ONIT
not
was.
call our portion Rome?
No, so ONIT was, as you'd mentioned, started by Calgary Regional Partnership.
Yeah.
And the ONIT brand was purchased by Southland Transportation after 2017, and Southland took it over. So when we put out an RFP every few years for the ONIT service, we call it the Calgary to Banff service. Because Southland has been the successful bidder, actually the only bidder, we're able to keep it the ONIT brand.
Okay.
And as I'd mentioned, it's never been classified as a permanent service. So we're just keeping doing it year by year for now.
And just from the financial perspective, that 17.5 shows up in the overall requisition. It's not separate. It shows up in the transit's requisition.
No, it does not.
It's a
That
separate-
is separate. We
Okay.
have never put on it in our budget.
Okay.
So where does that flow through then? Would it go through our engineering budget or?
We have a transit GL, and it's in the overall transit budget as a separate line item, is I'm assuming what he means. Yeah,
Okay.
so we used to put, correct me if I'm wrong here, Andy, when we first started with Rome, we had all of that in engineering, but over the last couple years, we've separated transit out to be its own reporting area, and it would be part of that area.
Thank you. Councilor Graham.
I think, along Councillor Ma's question about parallel conversations about trains, et cetera, what sort of support would Rome need for a more consistent service to Calgary on a regular basis, full-time, year-round? Has that visioning ever taken place, and what would you need from us to make that sort of thing happen?
At this point, in our strategic plan, we're looking at extension to Calgary, but it was not the priority. Our priority in our current strat plan is to build service within the Bow Valley. Definitely would be, we don't currently have the infrastructure to be able to do a year-round consistent, expansive service to Calgary. Not to say that it couldn't be done, but we would have to change some of our priorities.
There is going to be a strategic planning session for the commission coming up in the first quarter of next year. So who knows, that might come up. Personally, I want to see the local service move to maturity before we really start putting a lot of money elsewhere. We've got places in Canmore that I would like to have service.
Yeah, and, yeah, I don't disagree with that. Maybe those things could happen in parallel. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, anything can happen in parallel.
Yeah, enough money?
Yeah.
I would say the expansion of the current on-it service is definitely a possibility to more of a year-round service, potentially winter weekends to start. As Parks is the primary funding partner in that, their interest has been around reducing congestion in the park, so that's not as much of a concern in the winter. So I don't know how high on the priority list it would be for them to contribute.
I also think that with this addition of the Grassy Lake service, that could change the way people experience the Bow Valley as well from a visitor perspective. Was it last meeting or the meeting prior? We had some feedback from a couple that had traveled here during the summer, and they had done everything by transit, and they'd stayed in Canmore. And so I think that once we add the Grassy Lake service, it will really sort of bump us up to a new level, which is exciting and scary, I would say, all at the same time financially. Because sometimes I think it's like drinking from a fire hose, especially in the summertime. It's just like the people are nonstop, and customer experience, you know, is premier, but it's sometimes difficult to match based on the fact that it's the national park and there's nonstop people.
Yeah, like I rode the Lake Louise bus again a couple months ago, and it was awesome. But man, when you line up to get on the bus, you're like counting how many people are in front of you. You're like, I sure hope I get on because I gotta get back. But that service is exceptional. It's
we
really
have
good.
to make some changes. I mean, we do have an RFP out for some buses to add to that service in 2025. But we have challenges we have ambassadors that are in Banff and Lake Louise most days, occasionally to come to Canmore, but we don't have the challenges in Canmore with the overloads. And the ambassadors were seeing a fair amount of verbal abuse over the summer. So we ended up actually, initially in previous years, we've had one ambassador scheduled for Lake Louise. We only sent them out in pairs this year just for safety reasons. But, yeah, so people don't like waiting. And what tended to happen was half of our buses out there are reservation based. So on each bus, there's 28 seats for reservations and about 24 for walk-ups. And people would make a reservation to go out at 7:30 in the morning, come back at 7 o'clock at night, and then they'd be done early. So everybody wants to come back at between 4 and 5:30. So then you'd get those big lineups and people getting upset.
Or people not showing up within the 15-minute window and then being counted absent, and then their seat being given away and them losing it.
Different topic, on the new Grassy Lakes route, that's just a seasonal route. Has there been thought given to perhaps incorporating that as part of a regular route over You know, that,
Yes.
so you're not having to hire part-time drivers, that sort of thing?
Yeah, and that would be some of the discussions that will come out of the Dillon report, is what to do in the, what to do to make that a year-round route. Potentially, it wouldn't be the same route in summer versus winter. We can adjust to create area, or to go in areas that are more needed within the town of Canmore.
Is that currently planned like between downtown and Grassy Lakes?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm just wondering, like, as I think of it, you know, going down Larch and up through Grassy Lake, going through downtown, and all of a sudden we have a Larch, you know, bus, so, you know, things like that. So that's the Dillon report that will speak to that sort of thing.
It will, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Andy?
Just to clarify, the route does go along Bow Valley Trail and into the Palliser area where the bus stop's being created right now. So that provides service from those areas to downtown that then links into Grassy Lakes. So it's picking up visitors on Bow Valley Trail, but also providing connectivity to the town center.
But just during the summer months?
Currently, yes.
Yeah, okay. During prime bike riding season, but rainy days. It's a start, exactly.
And sometimes with these things, like, you got to start it before you know where it goes, right? Like,
I would kind of hope the bus would always know where it goes.
right?
but-
Like, but like, you know, perhaps like it's so popular or so well used that we have a rationale to expand it.
Yeah.
So, but we don't know until we get there.
Exactly.
I just want to remind people that when we started local transit, was it local or, yeah, there was a 3-hour gap in the schedule because that's how young and new we are. And so now we're looking at overloads, which is amazing. So the growth has been incredible.
That Quarry Lake stop next summer is going to be hectic.
Gangbusters.
Yes.
Scantily clad teenagers heading off to cool off. With all their floaties.
On that note, any other questions? I think we pretty much exhausted the conversation. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Bean.
you.
Really appreciate answering all these questions. And, oh, gifts. Awesome. Thank you. Actual boss. Sweet.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Muffin, or, you know, we have brownies too.
I'll take a muffin to go.
Okay. All right.
I did though.
What are we doing time-wise here? 9:39. Okay. All right, kids, put your toys away.
No! My kids will enjoy this.
Yeah. Okay.
I was gonna give mine to Henry and then I was like, no.
Anyone that doesn't want theirs, my kids will take it.
Okay, we're going to move to approval. Order, thank you. We're going to move to approval of the minutes, please. With regards to the October 31st minutes, and thank goodness there's no pictures in the minutes, but any errors or omissions? Councillor Ma.
For Tuesday, October 31st, under the economic update from CIBC Wood Gundy. Sorry. Under the section for economic update from CIBC Wood Gundy,
Yep.
I wonder if it should be the town's bank investments as opposed to the town's investments bank.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there's something about the
just-
formatting I'm not sure about. It's number two, under economic update. That's rubbing off.
We'll get there with the mic too.
Yeah. Thank you for the coaching, Councillor Hillstead.
Okay, so anything else? That's a good catch. All right, so I will move that we approve the minutes of October 31st, 2023 Finance Committee meeting as amended. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Moving to the minutes of November 2nd. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll move that we approve the minutes of November 2nd, 2023 Finance Committee meeting as circulated. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. We'll now move to item D1, the 2024 proposed paid parking budget amendments. And will you be speaking to those, or Scott will be speaking? Mr. Mackay.
Thank you very much. I feel like we're back in October 3rd, because we'll talk a little bit about integrated parking management and expand a little bit on the report that Council received during that meeting to identify some of the financial impacts associated with the changes administration's recommending to the program in 2024. That'll then flow nicely into the paid parking revenue allocation model, which Ms. Biswas will speak to afterwards. We're calling it integrated parking management, and I know a lot of folks think about the one integrated parking management tool being paid parking, but I think it's important to put that in context that there's a variety of tools used to manage parking, paid parking being one of them. And that we have a variety of program goals associated with our integrated parking management program. I'm not going to read them out, but I do provide this just as a reminder that administration's recommendation is really in support of achieving these goals. So that's where they come from. The recommendations that you would have seen in your package identify a few different fee increases, both in the town center as well as at Quarry Lake, as well as an expansion of the paid parking zones to include a couple of new areas. So I'll go through these each in a little bit more detail, and if you have questions, I'd encourage you to feel free to stop along the way as we work our way through. When it comes to fee increases in the town center, administration is proposing what I really view as a phase-in of fee increases. So what that would look like is January 1st to May 14th, 2024, so the first portion of next year, really being status quo parking rates, so no change, $2 per hour for parking in the town center. Then May 15th to October 15th, 2024, to increase the hourly rate in the town center by $1 per hour. From there, return to the low season rate, so $2 per hour from October 16th to December 31st, 2024. But during high utilization periods, primarily weekends and holiday periods, where parking demand is higher and we're seeing higher utilization rates, is to increase by $1 from the low season rates during that time. So a phased-in approach. That's supported by capacity data that's been collected throughout, well, I would say approximately 1.5 years of operating. And when you look at this graph, what I draw your attention to is that we do see increasing utilization rates year over year when we have two data sets to compare. There's the red line at 80% because that's the target maximum utilization during peak periods. And I think it's important to recognize that during those peak periods where we have, say, an 80% utilization, the most desirable parking locations within the town center are really operating at 90 to 100% utilization. So you can see that even areas in the low season on the weekend throughout the year are bumping up close to that 80% mark. Also, to help inform the recommendation of not increasing parking rates during weekdays in the low season, you can see the utilization data is supplied here. While we do see year-over-year growth, July through October, it hasn't bumped up close to that 80% mark, and as such, the justification for an increase isn't there at this time. Councillor Graham, I see you.
Just to clarify, it's not there, but the recommendation is for a year from now to bump it by $1?
Let me go back there. So a year from now, go ahead, Andy, if you want to speak to that one.
The recommendations for for the full peak season next summer to bump an hour weekdays and weekends.
Yeah.
But we aren't proposing off-season increases either this winter or next winter at this time.
So that says October 16th to December 34th, fee increase of $1.
Weekends and holidays.
Yes, so there is proposed weekends next winter would bump up by $1.
That's right. What we're finding is that in the winter season, weekends and holidays are still very busy, and that warrants an increase during those periods.
Okay, so what we have here is the graph around the weekday capacity off-season is low, but the weekends, we're presuming that they will start to get up around the 80% a year from now, based on the trending. I see.
Correct.
Okay, good. Got it. Thank you for that clarity.
No problem. Perhaps for an example, if you look at weekend utilization in February, it's almost the same as July.
Right. Okay.
And if I may.
Yeah.
And then back, same line of questioning. Weekdays during the summer are still sitting around 70-75%, roughly. So did we contemplate just doing a weekend increase for the summer months? I think that increase is very much justified on the weekends. I can see that, but I'm struggling a little bit more on the weekdays.
I would say that with the growth observed between the 2 years, there's an anticipation that will continue. So, example being, I believe the utilization in 2022, for example, of weekdays in July was below 60%, and then that's up closer to 75, maybe even 77. So a significant increase year over year, which we would expect to continue and either reach or potentially surpass that 80% mark.
Yeah, that's a 2-year trend, so that's kind of a hard trend line to really look at. I think I would like to see us get up to that 80% mark before, during weekdays, before making that bump there, but we'll see.
Because, yeah, certainly debate that with the motion.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just have a follow-up question. Why do you believe that it will bump up the same next year as it did this year? This year, I feel there's still some COVID recovery happening. Next year, where does that additional growth come from?
Yeah, I haven't done the analysis myself, but I'm not sure, Mr. Sarte, if you have a response to that one.
We certainly can't predict. What we are seeing is just general growth in the valley in general. Banff made a big jump in pricing. They were at what they termed to be full. In 2022, they made a big jump in pricing and saw that it didn't actually make a significant difference in terms of utilization. And now we're considering another big jump. And so the approach here is just to be proactive. We are seeing growth in visitation. It doesn't just manifest in parking demand, it manifests in congestion and traffic. And so to be proactive and ease in increases over time, the idea is to try to get ahead of it. If what we see in the data is that significant growth in parking demand doesn't materialize, that would be great, I think. That would, and particularly if business is strong, because it would mean that transit ridership's growing and walk cycles growing, and that the various strategies are effective in managing parking demand. But we don't want to get behind it either, because then the actions you need to take, the price increases you need to take would need to be more aggressive. So we see this as a way just to get ahead early in the program and phase in increases.
Okay, and so this is all in the same line? Yep. Go
So,
on this, because then we'll return to the presentation.
Yeah. Is there any argument to having consistency around the price similar to Banff as well? Right, like, if therefore and wherefore, does that lead to, like, right, like, I should have let Councillor Ma ask his question and better form my question, but just, is there any rationale to
Be it fair,
understanding where they're at and
Okay.
matching that?
I think there's a lot of rationale to coordinating strategies throughout the valley, but there will be nuance between different locations, and so you want to be using similar levers across the board, but you might adjust those levers differently based on your local demand, parking availability, and we see that even in Canmore between Quarry Lake and downtown.
Thank you.
Andy, when Banff says that their parking is full, are they using the 80% metric as well, or are they using a different number?
I've inquired to better understand their utilization data. I haven't gotten that back. I think they're still compiling and will be reporting it shortly with their council in a similar setting. But once I have that data, I can perhaps include it in a COW reports just so we can see a bit of a comparison.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, because the 80%, I understand the rationale. I'm just trying to see if they're using the same one. Okay.
Okay, good conversation around understanding that portion. And now, Mr. Mackay, Quarry Lake.
Yeah, moving on to Quarry Lake, again, based on utilization and parking demand, there's a recommendation to increase rates there as well. So again, during peak periods. So essentially, May 15th to October 15th, to become $10 an hour, the $2 an hour minimum. So that's a $5 per hour fee increase. And then similarly, October 16th to December 31st, use the $2.50 per hour rate. So no change there. Estimated that this will increase revenues by approximately $155,000 for 2024. The approach used here assumes that there'll be a drop in utilization, both because of the increase in rate, but also due to, ideally, more individuals accessing that part of town via the new transit route that'll run particularly during peak periods.
And of course, the resident permit system still remains intact, so people wishing to go walk their dogs and stuff like that can still utilize their free hours. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Graham, did you have a question on that?
I do. So from October 16th to December 31st, on the weekends, what are we doing? It implies, so it says the weekdays up here, which implies that we're doing something different on the weekends.
That was
Typo?
typo.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, it's
So just ignore weekdays, it's just $2.50 per hour. Okay. Good catch.
I have a question as well.
Yes, Councillor Faubert.
In the motion, it says increasing the fees at Quarry Lake by $5 per hour or to $5 per hour?
It'd be by $5
So wait,
per hour.
so then wouldn't it be $7.50?
Our current high season rates would be $5 per hour in sort of go from $5 per hour to $10.
10. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so, okay. So, right, so. Okay. Thank you. And then my other question around Quarry Lake is with respect to some of the conversations and requests from residents of the MD of Bighorn. I know I've had some conversations with people specifically around that location and the discussions around us providing residents of the MD with something around parking. And I know that in the presentation from October that that's kind of a council discussion. So then my question is, when do we have that discussion?
You know, the issue around the MD is not trying to treat them differently or say they're not residents of the Bow Valley, but recognizing that our taxpayers cover the cost of these things, and this is about mode shift. And those coming in from the MD right now would 100% be taking the vehicle or bringing their vehicle into Canmore, and maybe taking a bus, but so if they're taking their vehicle up there, where's the mode shift? And so when I've had conversations with Reeve Rosfald, it's all been around that. What, you know, how is the MD going to adjust so that they can maybe provide options to their residents of how to get into Canmore? And if they're doing that, then that opens the door to have conversations around these things. I guess an alternative might be some sort of contribution to our overall cost of our system, and so that the MD is contributing the same as Canmore, in which case their residents could be treated the same. And either way, it involves something from the MD as opposed to just an opening up from Canmore.
And-
Mr. Sardi, did you have a comment on that?
Just to add that there has been some consideration in these rates. Part of the strategy is outside of the peak season when those trips, the cost reflects the impact on the community of the trips during the peak season. The rates have been held low in the off season and reduced to allow for a $250 1-hour trip rather than a 2-hour minimum, to allow regional visitors to come utilize the park in our off season when those impacts on the community of their vehicle trips aren't as acute.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Councilor Faubert.
It kind of feels there might be some way to do it through our intermunicipal collaboration framework, and especially, and I see this kind of also being around recreation facilities and the dog park in particular. Even if the MD gets mode shift, are they allowing dogs on buses? Because Rome currently doesn't allow dogs on buses. So even if we have a Rome bus that goes to Grassy Lake, goes up to Grassy Lakes and stops at the quarry, dog park users can't use it. So that I know from my conversations with some MD residents that it's particularly the dog park as a recreation facility that they're hoping to access. So that it feels like a slightly different conversation as a result of that nuance. I am more than happy for it to go through the intermunicipal collaboration framework, but I think that we need to be clear to residents of the MD that there's a process their elected officials have to go
That's
through
right.
first
Well,
in
that's-
order.
I mean, I've heard from every single one of their associations
Yeah.
and replied identically to all of them that it is about mode shift, and that it is for the MD to decide. Certainly, those coming from the MD to walk their dogs, there's multiple free options.
That's true.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, if they want to go to Quarry Lake specifically, well, in the off season, it's going to cost $2.50 for that hour.
Can I just add to that? Thanks. My understanding of the past with this hasn't come up since I've been in the role at the intermunicipal committee or in our negotiations. My understanding is that in the past, the MD's request administratively has been to focus solely on recreation facilities and not to include outdoor amenities. And so I do think you answered your own question in some way, that if that's what MD residents want, the conversation isn't with the town of Canmore, it's with their elected officials, and then it becomes that we're happy to include any number of things or remove things from the agreement if they're providing their service themselves. But if they want it included, then it's their representatives who bring it to us as part of that negotiation. And we're happy to have those conversations and look at it. But it hasn't been a request through that committee so far. Yeah.
And I consider this now the conversation.
Yeah.
Has been had. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, good conversation. Councilor Maud, did you have something on that?
Could you explain to me more behind the 2-hour minimum piece? Because like some users would come to me and they'd be like, hey, like, I get it. It's going to cost a bit more, but I only want to go for like 45 minutes. Why do I need to pay 2 hours? And I think it's just good to get that conversation out. I'm curious.
Are they local?
Sometimes local or not.
Well, they get the first 3 hours free.
Yeah. But you know, they use their 3 hours here and they want to come back in the afternoon. It's just like a general conversation on why 2 hours minimum.
Sure, I'll let Mr. I could try to answer that, but I think Mr. Sarte will be more eloquent.
Going back to the initial setup, we had $5 an hour, 4-hour minimum. The idea being that there's a minimum cost. It's not just about utilizing parking. It's like a park entry fee. And we had looked at the time, if you'll recall, at some other amenities. There was the lakeside amenity in Chestermere, and we'd compared a few other amenity entry fees. And so it was a means of managing parking, but it also reflects the fact that there are operating costs associated with Quarry Lake as a larger amenity. And that was the intent with the minimum. Some of the feedback that we got from that first year resulted in that being reduced from 4 hours to 2 hours. And that's where the fee went from $20 minimum, like a base fee of $20 to $10. And what we're doing now is bumping that so the minimum cost it's essentially like a visit fee to Quarry Lake of $20. And 2 hours is better than 4 because it's going to encourage turnover. But it's still, it's the parking piece, it's the mode shift piece, and it's the, there's a large facility that you're accessing, and it's essentially a facility access fee.
Thank you.
If I'll just add to that too, I think the other thing is the significant demand we've seen on that space change with COVID. So I do think, I really appreciate Mr. Sarte's answer in terms of managing the whole facility. I get that people want to access their part for the time that they want to, but the significant demand, the what is shifted in that space, we also need to shift our response, and it means a shift in what and how people can access it compared to maybe what people are used to, because of the looking at the bigger picture instead of all the individual desires.
Thank you, that's helpful. With Rocky Mountain Heritage Foundation, do they embark on these conversations, or are they just kind of amenable to whatever parking price we dictate, or do they push for higher parking prices? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, we've notified them that this is in front of council, and they haven't given any feedback. So while they are not part of the decision maker, we do include that. We make them aware of what's being brought forward. Yeah, we haven't heard anything back.
Oh, Councilor McCall.
Yeah, so just back to Councillor Faubert's questions around intermunicipal agreements. When was the last time, when does our current recreation agreement with the MD expire?
I'd have to double check. I think it's 2024 or 2025. Those intermunicipal committee meetings had a bunch of stop-start because there's been a lot of change in both the town of Canmore initially and then the MD. We did just meet in the last couple months, I think at the start of this fall, and we're meeting again in January, and part of the agenda is to review all of those agreements and to look at what's in them, what the terms are, when they're up. Yeah, the fire agreement is up in end of 2024.
Right.
But recreation is coming soon after, but we are, as a committee, it's our next agenda is to dust them all off and look at the status of them. And we have a chart that we bring out to every meeting of what all the agreements are, what the expiry dates are, and whether or not it's automatic renewal or, what the terms are. So I believe it's, sorry, that was a really long-winded
No, no, it's
answer
fine.
to a simple question. It's either 24 or 25, and we have it on the agenda to look at.
So will there be a terms of reference that council will be looking at in terms of what those discussions will look like moving forward, in particular the recreation services agreement?
I don't know that we've ever brought a terms of reference before. It's usually been at the discretion of what the MD wants to include. So it's new territory with a relatively new reeve and a new CAO. We're taking a bit of a different approach. So I don't know if there'll be a terms of reference or not, but I would say it's kind of a new day in terms of looking at them
Yeah.
newly.
And I would just say that the recreation services agreement that we finally signed, that your predecessor signed with the MD, was with a different regime at the MD, and it found MD residents paying less for local services than Canmore residences from a tax perspective, and I would like to see that changed. And I don't know what my colleagues think, but I would like to see at least equity in between those, knowing that they only use 5 to 10% of our indoor services, but there were a lot of things that were excluded, and I would like to see them included. But that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, so
It's a budget discussion, though.
yeah, the terms of reference for an intermunicipal really heavily makes it more complicated because the intermunicipal committee basically will have a discussion as to what in the agreement. Ultimately, the council can decide if they don't agree with it.
That's right.
You know, they can refuse it. But for us to go to them and say, you know, basically an ultimatum, which is if we're operating to a terms of reference, it has to include this, and they're not there.
Yeah, and I use the term terms of reference because, for lack of a better,
Right.
like, do you have any marching orders? Like, how is that going to look like? It's not something that I expect that happens in a council meeting. It's more like, this is what, like, we would like to see out of an agreement, and go
I think we need to
forth.
start with the January
Yeah.
meeting,
Yeah.
and we haven't really even dusted them off as a committee yet, because of the stops and starts, so
Gotcha.
more to come.
Thank you.
And the intermunicipal collaboration framework as a process this is the first time it was mandatory in Alberta to be implemented by like 2021. So this is their first one. So if even the process to getting there gets improved the second time you do it, and then it was part of the spring caucus, we did a whole day session on these, there is grant funding available to do intermunicipal collaboration framework. So
Aren't those mostly planning focused?
Yeah, this is an ICF we're talking
Yeah,
about.
we're talking
Well, there's two, that does have a planning focus, but you can also refer to other negotiation tools and agreements that you have. So our ICF with the MD references all of our other agreements for other services.
Right.
It doesn't set the terms of them.
No.
I can't remember.
No,
I haven't,
they-
I do feel like we're in a bit of a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot, I haven't looked at this recently, we'll look
That's
at it in
fine. Okay.
January. Yeah.
All right.
There's a lot of good questions here, but in the short term, for the decisions in front of you today, this is where we are with what MD residents would have to pay.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm wondering if you have a capacity graph for us on Quarter Lake, just like you did for downtown?
I do not have one of those, but we can look into bringing that data back if it's available.
Thank you.
For the operations side, it's largely been around the enforcement team and parking ambassadors' presence up there and their recognition that any nice day, essentially, we're having overflow conditions. So we haven't looked at specific day-to-day, but it's what's happening on those peak days.
Okay.
Okay, so we've essentially covered I would say, the hourly fee increase portion of the presentation. So just to maybe put a bit of a bow on that, I would suggest utilization data, integrated parking management plan goals, used to inform fee increases that, if made, would result in $400,000 in additional revenue generated in 2024 from the town center, and $155,000 for the year at Quarry Lake. I'm going to keep us moving to the expense side. So administration is also proposing that expenses in the 2024 operating budget be increased for a total of $73,000, which really fall into two buckets. The first one for additional contracted services costs to allow for flexibility to make minor program and software changes, small operational changes, really to create an efficiency and in some cases a customer service increase related to our current management system. So changes to things like how we manage permit renewals. There's been questions around is a 15-minute increment more desirable compared to a 30-minute increment, for paying for parking, those types of things. And I would say these things fall into the decision-making framework that was provided during the October 3rd presentation, but that's really the intent of that funding. The other funding is really to do with bank service fees and program materials to reflect actual costs. So when we created the 2023 budget, we did so with very little information, and so if we have more revenue and more transactions, we're going to have additional processing costs associated with that. So that's to capture those pieces.
I'm having trouble with the math.
Yeah, that's what I was. I see a 63,000.
It's 378, because it looks like 63,000 based, so you're saying there's a typo on the slide and the 387 should be 378? That would make a lot more sense. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because I was getting 63,800
Yeah.
as a difference.
There you go.
Mr. McKay, I wonder if you could break out a little bit for me the bank fees versus the program materials.
I mean, program materials would be things like ticket machines.
Yeah, I understand the difference between those two things.
Sure.
The finances between them.
I don't have that at my fingertips, but Ms. Biswell may.
It was more around 25,000 bank fees, and the remaining was materials.
Wow.
It's a lot of increase in bank fees with higher revenues.
And then one more, this 43,000, is that reoccurring, or is this a one-time?
It's a good question. I suspect there will likely need to be a little bit of funding for ongoing maintenance and updates to the software system, et cetera. However, I think we need to do a little bit more work as we create the 2025 budget to identify what that might look like.
So these are increases that were already included in the amounts that were provided to us, and it's within 2.3.
That's
and
correct.
it sounds like these are services that, probably given that it's a new service, these are amounts that would cover extra costs that we're not anticipating.
Correct.
Sir, if I may. For the software changes, I'm not too sure if this is encapsulated in this part of the conversation or not. I know there's been people curious if we can have different parking increments. Right now, we're working off a 30-minute increment. I know at one point we spoke about exploring the possibility of 20 or 15. Where are we at with that?
Yeah, I would say administration has a list of potential parking system changes. I know that one is certainly on it. So that's something we would need to do a little bit more exploration with, explore exactly how much making that change would in fact cost, and then also look at all the other requested changes to prioritize what's going to be most impactful. Yeah, but that's certainly part of it. I don't want to, I guess, commit to that being, happen as soon as the budget is approved or isn't, I suppose. But that's one we've heard a number of times. Okay. We'll keep moving here to the capital expense side of things. So the Finance Committee, November 2nd, heard about this project as a capital budget amendment, really to expand the paid parking zones to Riverside Park and the boat launch area. That capital project seemed to be endorsed during that meeting, and now to talk about the operating budget impact associated with that. So it's estimated that with that new zone, we'd see additional revenue of approximately $70,000 in 2024. There's a fairly significant range there because it's new, and just like we saw in our first year of paid parking operation, our forecast didn't exactly match the revenue that was generated out of the town center. And then also, just so that everyone has a picture of what that looks like, an approximate picture at least. This shows the expansion areas where paid parking would be implemented. So close to the top of the screen, Riverside Park. Currently, there's a resident parking permit zone, or that's how parking directly in front of the homes on that street is being managed. This would implement paid parking on the other side of the street, where we're seeing high demand, particularly for those looking to head to the engine bridge and view that location. And then similarly, the boat launch area, high demand, high utilization, certainly in peak season, and so pricing parking in that zone, and then surrounding it with a resident parking permit area would prevent the impacts of spillover. I would say that this has been drawn, so the exact start and end of the paid parking and the exact start and end of the RPP zones are approximate, but it's intended to give the Finance Committee a picture of what that would look like.
Ms. Wickham, you had a question on that?
A couple questions, actually. My first question is probably about 10 years ago, there was a capital project that came to council to upgrade and repair the road on River Road, that whole area there. And it fell away at some point, I don't know when. And I'm wondering if that is being reconsidered now that we are going to be charging for that area. And yeah, firstly, I wanted to actually say, the water has become something I have never seen in my 23 years living here, the amount of people that are on the water. And so there's no really other boat access, I believe, in Canmore than this one. And so this kind of concerns me a bit, I have to say, in terms of public access. But besides that, I wanted to talk about River Road and to see what kind of changes and upgrades the town would be making in exchange for this, because it is not awesome in the winter there in terms of the heaving and the amount of water it gets and the way it's plowed and so on and so forth. And I'm wondering if there might be a change in experience there.
I believe the project you're referring to is still in the capital plan.
Okay.
It gets deferred over time. It's a large
Okay.
project. It's called the Bow Bridge Corridor. So we.
Was that, oh, it's before the Bow Bridge. No, this was before.
Yep. It's
This might
morphed
have been
into.
before your time,
Okay.
actually. I can't remember. You came in 2011?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just, go ahead, sorry.
Yes, so the intent is that this corridor get upgraded over time.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, that's one of the projects that's been unfunded in the cap plan with the new proposed cap plan. So we'll have to revisit the timing and extent of improvements on the corridor in 2025. In the meantime, we continue to improve if there are acute things on the corridor that need to be addressed. We have street and drainage rehab budgets that we can do that, but there will not be any large-scale improvements associated with this corridor. We do plan on Riverside. There will be grading. That area has some ponding issues. So along River Road and along Riverside Park, there will be some minor grading and delineation of the parking area.
Okay.
I just wanted to add to that too. I think that's a really good example of the link between the paid parking revenues and the life cycle work that we have to do,
Yeah.
because it's really about upgrading infrastructure so it can handle that additional demand that it's seeing. So thinking back to the discussion at council of the revenue allocation model, that's a perfect example of the type of situation we were envisioning.
Okay. So actually, I was just speaking about River Road and that capital. Yeah, no, I know. That's why I tried to step back. I was probably confusing in my language. There was a capital plan that was just specific to River Road, and that was probably over 10 years ago, and it just fell away at some point from our plans. And it was to address the heaving, and it is particularly bad there, I would say. I don't know if anybody's ever tried to walk through there, but you're taking your life into your hands in the middle of winter. And so if we're, I guess I want to understand what is the impetus for this specific area, and how, yeah, I just wanted to know the impetus for this specific area. And I guess I'm also wondering if, on the other side of the bridge, I guess I had assumed that, and I maybe hoped that it would just be the parking lot and not the street, it's the road itself. But because there is no real other access to water where you can take a boat or a stand-up paddleboard or anything like that on the Bow River than here. And yeah, those were my questions.
There is access at Three Sisters. I mean, it's not great. It's not as convenient as downtown, but it is, I do it all the time. It's boat access.
You can,
You can park, and there's a gate that you can manually open, and there's parking there.
I don't think I
and-
knew that. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
It's okay. I mean, it's not it's not well-known, and it's not as convenient, but it is a second access. Yeah.
It is now.
Yeah, sorry. But go ahead
The
to your
hundreds
other
of people
question.
watching us at budget this
Yeah.
morning, right?
Yeah, I apologize. There was a capital project that delineated the parking and paved the parking. When we looked at the cost for that, they were pretty significant, and so it's that idea of how much do you spend on parking versus other civic improvements. And that project did fall away, but the budget here does include some dollars for the grading in that area for those reasons, so it will be improved to some extent, and there has been some drainage improvements over the years. So the intent would be there'd be minor improvements.
Will there be delineation of stalls?
Yes, that's the intent.
Okay, because that's, sometimes the parking along there is atrocious.
Yeah.
People parking with three-quarters of a car on either side, empty spot on either side of them.
Yeah. The current concept shows parallel parking for the narrower portions, and then angle parking where it's wider with curb stops to help line the cars up.
Okay, thank you.
And then I guess my question was, what's the impetus for that particular stretch at River Road? Have we been getting like overloaded there, or is there, why there?
I would say one of the impetus, or one of the causes is interest in the engine bridge after it was featured in a popular TV show.
Damn it, I don't even watch TV.
And so individuals are traveling to see that after watching those films.
So it's use,
Okay.
demand.
And that's all I had for now, other than, had you considered just the parking lot as opposed to that whole stretch of road for parking, paid parking?
Yes, and we can continue to look at that as we delineate. The rationale for including the street is it's not fronting on any residential there,
Okay.
so it wouldn't have a direct impact on residents and could allow us to capture more visitation.
Where do currently the commercial rafters park their vehicles after they've unloaded them? I don't know why I'm looking at you, except for yesterday. I didn't know you did that actually on the side, so until you mentioned something yesterday, I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So forgive me for looking at you
That's okay.
for an answer.
Yeah, I have lots of questions around this because I am a frequent user of that area. it is the main access point for most boat. There is some other ones. It is very poor, and down in Three Sisters. This is a very busy area, and I'm wondering what consultation we've done with both residents and users of that area to inform these ideas. And I would call the parking lot down at the boat launch almost dysfunctional. So I'm wondering if we have any plans for improvement there through these funds. My other concern is anybody with a boat that's trailering that boat cannot park in the current parking lot, and they do park on the road, and that may or may not, that would probably incur a fee from them to do so. And then to avoid that, they're going to be in the neighborhood.
But they're not, and there's actually going to be no place for them nearby, unless they're local, I guess, but.
Yeah, I'm concerned about all those things. So I guess I'll start off with, what consultation did we get from the community in regards to these?
At this point, we haven't consulted directly with the community. We would inform the community and perhaps solicit feedback on the extent of the zones if it were to be approved. I think pricing the parking is in support of the types of uses that you're describing. Yes, there would be a fee for an operator, but it's of course a fee for use of municipal infrastructure. And it's a way to help manage the demand. I imagine there's lots of times they go down there and have no place to park because it's overrun. So our goal with the program is to ensure that parking is available in each area and setting regulation and pricing in support of that. So ultimately, yes, there may be a fee for operators, and that might become part of their operating costs, but it allows the area to actually be functional when demand is high.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the operators would be opposed to that. To answer Councilor McCallum's question about where do the Raptors park, they don't park there. They drop their boats off.
And they go.
Yeah,
I don't recollect seeing them there, and that's why I was like, where do they go?
About a half an hour at a point in time. There's basically two operators that flip. One has the half hour and one has the hour, and they kind of just rotate through. It works pretty well.
Slick.
It's actually the fishermen that, and the people going to Banff to canoe back down, those people would be dramatically impacted.
I will say, just in support of that, because I am a big river user as well, that the river is unlike a lake. It's not, you don't come and go from the same location. It's pretty hard to do unless you're in a motorized, and most things on the river are human powered. So yes, if you're going to canoe from Banff to Canmore, it would mean you're going to pay a lot to park there all day. And again, as a user, I believe you should, because it limits who else can come and have access to a very popular location. Or you create, I mean, what we do is we leave a bike and then bike home and get the vehicle and do the shuttle. So if you're local, it allows, I think you can be creative about your use. That doesn't just mean you show up and get to park all day, that you, or if you want to, that you pay to do that. I mean, to me, that feels reasonable, given how much demand there is on hot days and nice days. You know, and on not nice weather days, not that many people want to be on the water, so then it's a lot easier to find a spot for the day. But I think right now, the way the system works is it limits a few users who get organized to get there early, and then forces everyone else to come up with other creative solutions. And I think this might be more of an equalizer.
So then what are we going to do about the parking lot? Because I would agree with Councillor Graham that it is dysfunctional. It's not wide enough, like it's difficult. And we get a lot of people with RVs that go in there, especially in the heat of the summer, because there's shade.
And then they watch them try to turn around in there.
Good God. Barely do it with my minivan.
Mr. Sartre?
Sorry, just to the earlier point, a reminder, there's 3 hours free for those with resident passes, so that would help businesses and individuals. For improvements to the lot, there are none planned right now, acknowledging that it is a tight space and that it is quite busy. At this point, we don't have any intention to do that, but we can do things like signage. That's part of this budget to maybe discourage RVs or small car only or whatever the case is. So we can take away that feedback and look at it as part of the signage plan.
I think that if, one other comment about the RPP in that area, if we were to institute an RPP, you would want to extend it, and maybe it is extended. I think you would want to extend it past mine side, so that people aren't, there's overflow that comes on the street right there in front of mine side court, and I think those people would probably appreciate having that parking protected for them, for that hood there.
Mike, Andy.
Perfect. Eat the mic.
Yes, the extents will be looked at on the ground
Okay.
if approved.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's allow Mr. Mackay to finish the, I guess, through the alternatives, and then we're going to take a break.
Sounds good. So, I mean, there's been a few alternatives considered. A 2-hour rate increase in the town center was also considered. However, at this time, based on utilization rates, we didn't bring that amount forward. You know, a measured small increase amount seems prudent, and then ongoing monitoring of utilization rates to potentially justify increases in future years is the recommended approach there. And then, of course, council could consider any of the proposed changes independently. And I think we've had some discussion on that already. And so with that, I have the recommendations again here. Unsure if you'd like to deal with those now, or if that's something you want to.
Just something to think about during the break, not to take away your break. If these are considered separately, do we actually need that whole preamble about changes associated to increase to 625? Because each one of them deals with an amount. So I'm just thinking if we were dealing, because I think I will deal with them, each of them independently. So that's one thing, just a question. Secondly, does the first bullet point actually capture what you want? Because it just refers to peak season, it doesn't refer to, I know it says high utilization, but I think it should say and weekends in the low season starting October 2024.
Sure.
So if there's some wording that, if you can just give thought to those things, because when we come back, we're gonna deal with these motions.
Okay. Yeah, well, we can make that adjustment over the break to be really specific on high utilization.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Mah.
For second bullet point, perhaps consider changing it to increase of parking fees at Quarry Lake to $5 an hour as opposed to by $5 an hour, because it feels.
That's correct. It is by $5.
It is by $5 per hour.
Oh,
It's currently 5, it's going to 10.
okay, I understand. Thank you. All right.
What we could do is add 210.
Yeah, does that clarity piece to the final price. Sorry, I messed that up.
All right. So with that then, let's take a break till 10:45.
So I'm thinking that
Lots
actually,
of letters,
he's
eh?
gonna break them into 3. We don't need any of this.
No.
It's just that.
Everybody turn off their mic. Turn off your mics.
Thank you very much to Mr. Mackay and Ms. Biswas and all those that were involved in just refining the recommended motions so that they can be dealt with separately and accurate around the wording around the seasons. So we're going to deal with each one of these one by one. Before getting to the motions, I just want to check with the Finance Committee to see if anyone has any further questions that occurred to them about any of this report before we go to debate the motions. Oh, there we go. Excellent. Councillor Ma.
Just a quick question. I understand we have proposed hourly parking changes. Is there a flow-through effect to monthly parking permits?
No, we're not bringing forward pricing changes for those at this time.
Okay, great. Just curious.
And I was curious about the financial ramifications of not upping by $1 in the downtown core on weekdays. What financial?
In the peak season?
In the peak season,
Oh, right, okay.
Weekdays, downtown core.
I suspect Ms. Biswas would need to do a bit of work to bring back a precise number there.
I could bring back.
I guess I'll leave it to my colleagues to whether or not they really need that number or not.
I think it's suffice to say it won't be an increase of revenue of 400,000. It'd be something less.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Any other questions? So I'll move that Finance Committee recommend to Council an increase of parking fees in the town centre by $1 per hour for the peak season starting in 2024, and during weekends and holiday periods during the low season starting in October, on October 16th, 2024, thereby increasing revenues by approximately $400,000 for the year. Speaking to that motion, I mean, it's all estimates as far as revenues. Could be less, could be more. Really, we're talking about the concept of if and when we increase parking fees. As I look at this, I like the barometers of the 80% full. It does give us an indication of those periods where there's going to be struggle. And if there is any encouragement for turnover, it would be during those times. And of course, that's what the price does, is make sure that somebody really wants to be there while they're paying that dollar, or those dollars. I definitely see the need in the peak season. The weekends are already over 80% at or over, and while it's only 2 seasons, they're definitely trending up in the summer for the weekday. And I do see the oh, wait a minute. Just grabbing the right graph here. I guess I had a question. I'm just looking at this weekday capacity in off-season. That's just weekday capacity, period. It's not just in the off-season, right? Yeah, that's the full year. Okay, the full year, yeah. Okay, so yeah, we see that in the summer, we're definitely poking up there, getting close to the 80. And then in the off-season, we're definitely getting close to that 80 as well. So I'm fine to support this motion. I originally was coming at it with, I don't know if it's too soon, But given the learnings that we can have from our neighbors in Banff, I think we have to stay on top of this. And their increases are actually higher than ours right now. And so, I mean, there actually could be an argument that we should be moving to at parity with them. And so this is actually stopping short of that, and we'll see what impact it has over the next year. So I'd support this motion and look forward to hearing what others think. Councillor Graham?
I'd like to propose an amendment.
Okay.
Increase of parking fees to the town center by $1 per hour in the peak season on the weekends.
Weekends and holidays,
Weekends and holidays, thank you.
starting in 2024. So you would be looking to insert after peak season on the weekends and holiday periods starting in 2024. So just inserting weekends and holidays,
Correct.
or during weekends and holidays, okay? Does everybody understand that amendment? I think so. Okay, now speaking to it.
Speaking to it, the weekends are definitely at that 80% capacity. I sit and watch those parking lots on a very regular basis with my business and can confirm these numbers. On the weekdays, we are not at the 80% yet. We are trending upwards, but I don't think we are there. With the economy potentially changing for 2024, I'm a little nervous about this increase. The feedback we've gotten from some businesses in the downtown core is that they are looking to bolster those weekday traffic, and I think that this increase is just a little premature for me personally. I look forward to hearing from my colleagues on what they think.
Would anybody like to speak to that amendment? Councillor Faubert?
Thank you for your proposed amendment. I am not in support of it at this time because I think in the summer months, weekdays have the potential, the same potential for really high visitation, especially, like the summer months are a different beast than the off-season because a lot of people are choosing that period of time to visit this place. And so when we talk about managing our parking during this time, I think a consistent approach over the high season for our pricing is the right direction.
Thank you. Just a clarification, perhaps to Mr. Mackay or Mr. Sarte. When we're talking weekend, we're talking Saturday, Sunday. We're not including Fridays. Fridays would be included as part of the weekday. Yes.
Correct. I suppose in the low season, Good Friday would be a holiday, which would...
Right.
But yes,
Yeah.
just Saturday, Sunday.
Councillor Graham? Yeah.
That's a really good point. And for me, it's Monday to Thursday that are the soft days in particular. I'd like to either...
Are you tweaking yours?
Yeah, I'd like to either remove this or change it, or tell me how proceed you like.
Well, okay, let me just ask what
Help
you're...
me.
So what is the concern you're trying to get at here? We have resident passes, so presumably it's not, this increase is not in the first instance going to stop somebody coming shopping downtown who's a resident, because it hasn't changed for them. So it's really about your concern that it will dissuade people from stopping in Canmore and shopping downtown because it's an extra $1 on Monday to Thursday or Monday to Friday?
I think there's, I look at vibrancy and vibrancy of the downtown core, whether that's locals or otherwise. And what I think the data is saying, and what I personally see, is that we are softer during the week. So I don't want to do anything to discourage that vibrancy at this point in time. I think if we do get above these 80% numbers or closer to it, and we see another year trend in that direction, then I'm 100% on board for that increase then. I think we're just a little premature now. And I'd like to change this from not to Monday to Thursday, excluding Monday to Thursday. I don't know how to word this in here, I'm sorry.
What about the holiday Mondays?
Can I make a
Yes. Yeah.
just procedurally, I think, you know, you can amend your own amendment.
Yeah.
And we could just say on Fridays, Saturdays,
Long weekends.
Sundays, and holidays.
Thank you. Sorry, Cheryl. Ms. Hyde.
Okay, so there's been a clarification of the proposed amendment. On the weekend, on Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays.
Thank you very much. That reflects what I'm trying to do.
Okay. So it is now just applying that 1 hour per hour increase that's proposed during the peak season on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays, starting in 2024, and
And
during weekend and holidays during the low season.
And I took the liberty of striking, because we don't know what that revenue change would be, I think it's important that we remove that sentence because we know it won't be that amount. So, but I think you can still make the motion without having that
Yeah.
revenue approximation.
I will take that as a friendly amendment to the main motion.
Sorry, thank you.
And as far as the amendment goes, now that's accurate, okay? Councillor Faubert, does that change anything for you? You've already spoken to it. Go ahead.
No, I think a consistent approach through the summer as a resort destination is where we should be at.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I could support Councillor Graham's motion. I came off of 2 years on BIA, and just looking at this charts here, like, I totally support the approach administration's using here of the 80% threshold line, and because we're still not quite crossing that line, and then there's an assumption that, like, I understand, like, the desire to get ahead of it. At the same time, when I've had conversations the last 2 years with BIA, there is, like, you know, inherent stress that the business owners feel from Monday to Thursday with regards to visitation. I think coming forward, this last year, you could see it in the economic situation for visitors. You know, interest rates, all that stuff, spending's a little bit down, and that's probably going to persist into this next coming year. And so I'm happy to bump up once we start breaking that 80% threshold, but I'm happy to kind of like follow Councillor Graham's initiative on here. Thank you.
Councillor Mayor?
Thank you. I'm inclined to support this also. Actually, many of the reasons that were just stated by Councillor Ma. I do think our downtown, being on the BIA also, it's the stress for them is in that mid-week, and I just think this would be just one little thing to make them feel more comfortable. And maybe encourage some people that will encourage more usage from even visitors coming in for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, day trippers. I know it's $1 an hour, but.
Councillor Hillstead?
I appreciate you bringing this motion forward. I don't think I can support it this time. Again, I kind of agree with Councillor Faubert. It's just the consistency. This just then makes it, you know, it's just one more thing to think about. What day is it? Okay, like, I know I lose track of the days sometimes. So, and if someone's coming in and they're like, oh well, I thought it was this day, and I thought yesterday on Thursday wasn't this, and now today I'm charged more. So, again, people can learn to adapt and they'll figure it out. But to me, I like the rationale that the admin put forward. I think we are creeping up to that 80%. Again, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see if it's going to hit there next year. But again, I feel like this increase is not a drastic increase. And I think the consistency of it, of just making it throughout the week all the same, I think that's just more simple approach. And I don't think the dollar difference is going to change someone driving from Calgary, because the gas alone is more expensive than the parking is going to be. So if they're choosing to come here, they're going to pay it, or they're not going to come here at all. So I don't think the $1 increase is really playing into the minds. If it was a $20, $30, yes, totally. The $1 is not going to play into someone's mind. And you know, there'll be somebody out there that's going to say, yes, it played into my decision. Fair enough. There's somebody out there that this is going to affect them. But I think the majority of people, a $1 an hour increase is not going to make them decide whether they're going to come and park downtown. It might make them decide, I'm going to go park a little further out and not pay that at all and walk into town. I'm still going strong. I have not paid for parking in Canmore yet. I keep just parking outside of town, walking in, or I use my 3 free hours. So again, we all can make different choices, and so for that reason, I'm not going to support it, but I do appreciate this motion. It's a good motion. So.
Good. Councillor McKellar?
So I won't be able to support this motion. I agree with my colleagues that consistency is key. I honestly don't think somebody's going to get in their car and decide to not come to Canmore on a Saturday versus a Friday versus a Thursday based on a $1 per hour. And I guess, you know, in terms of the business community downtown, I guess, do they want the tourists to pay the $1 or do they want to pay it in their taxes? Because that is the alternative. And, you know, we've been asked over many, many years to try and limit the impact of tourists on local business and community, and so this is one way of doing it. Unfortunately, locals get caught in it sometimes, but we aren't being given the precise tools to do the precise things that we want to precisely do. So I won't be able to support the amendment.
Well, I have a comment. Shall I wait till after you're done, or?
You can go ahead and make your comment. I have a pretty good idea which way I'm going, but go ahead.
Comment away.
I wonder, if this $1 an hour actually had a negative impact on usage or the vibrancy of downtown, or what feedback the downtown business owners may give us that would convince us to walk this $1 back another year. I just think we're a year premature.
Okay. I can't support this amendment. I think consistency is important. I don't think that this will affect locals' decisions at all. So because it shouldn't factor into that if they're coming down, unless they're coming down for more than 3 hours, in which case they're probably working downtown, in which case they probably got a different system worked out anyway. This is really about visitors and the cost to them. I don't think it's going to be influential in their decision-making too much, but hopefully it will be influential in their turning over their vehicles if it gets to be tight. And so I don't think that this will actually protect the downtown at all. I think it's going to be the same traffic that it's going to be. That then begs the question, once we start to get really higher, we're definitely going to have to increase it more. In the meantime, I see this as extra revenues to handle the cost of free transit and some road repairs. Anything to close, Councillor Graham?
No, thank you.
Okay, call the question. All those in favor of this amendment? Opposed? The amending motion is defeated with Councillors Graham, Mara, and Ma in support. That brings us back to the original motion. I've already spoken in favor of it. Would anybody else like to speak to this motion? Councillor Faubert.
Yes, please.
I am accepting the friendly amendment to the, remove the thereby and everything after. Thereby and thereafter? Okay.
Thereby,
Thereby.
nice to buy.
Yeah, so that's a friendly amendment there. Councillor Faubert.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be speaking in favor of all three of these motions. I think that as we grow into our paid parking program and pursuing integrated parking management in our community, we need to continue to adjust and evolve what this service level does. I think the fee increase during the peak season in the downtown, as well as the expansion or the fee increase in the peak season for Quarry Lake, as well as the expansion in the town center zone, are appropriate ways in the next year to expand the paid parking program and to continue to evolve it. There are other things, I think, in the future that'll happen, and I think that this kind, when Councillor Graham talks about in his past motion that this isn't the year, it's the next year, that we will, for the near future, be planning and adjusting and having this service evolve in our community. There are other locations where paid parking might be appropriate in our community, and I know some have come up through these processes. There's the collaboration with our rural neighbors around the access of their residents. There are many, many, many ways in the future that we can continue to improve this program, and I think these are three ways that we can improve it in 2024 that I fully support. I'll also add that this then goes to council.
Yeah.
So should we continue to consider this one or have more information? We could adjust before we finally approve it, but I have confidence in what is before us right now as being a good direction to head. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak to this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously.
Sir, could I just confirm, would the friendly amendment to keep the strikeout there? Yes.
Yes.
So you want that to carry through from the very beginning when we
Yeah.
put it on the floor?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
And so I'll give you a moment there because I'm going to make the same friendly, it's actually not a friendly amendment. I'm not going to include the last part of that sentence. I'll just put it on the floor as I'll move the council or finance committee recommend to council an increase of parking fees at Quarry Lake by $5 per hour to $10 per hour for the peak season only, beginning May 15th, 2024. Anybody seeking to put forward an amendment? Okay, I'm going to be speaking in favor of this for the same reasons. We're seeing usage. We need to help that be part of the decision making for those going up to Quarry Lake and finding an alternative route. And thankfully, there's also going to be an alternative route, and that's through the transit. And once again, this shouldn't affect residents unless they're staying over 3 hours and haven't used up any of their time downtown. So anybody else wishing to speak to the motion? Okay, Councillor Graham.
I too will be in support of this one, and the conversation I'm looking forward to is with the Rocky Mountain Heritage Foundation and how we can reinvest these funds back into the infrastructure up in Quarry Lake to make that incredible facility even better. So I'm looking forward to that conversation in the future.
Karen, Councillor Madden.
Thank you. I'm definitely in support of this motion here. This is one way that our increased visitation from people outside of the area, visitors, and of course us too. And I like the idea that it's sort of like as Mr. Asarte alluded to, that it's like a park fee besides parking, It's a park fee that includes parking, or reverse, parking includes this lovely area that you can use. So I'm definitely in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ma?
Thank you, Your Worship. I can support this. I also think, as you mentioned, we do have next year a bus route. Jesus, a train. A bus route going up to the quarry, so check that out. Don't let that out of the bag. Anyway, bus. You can take the bus to Quarry Lake next summer. It's going to be great. Thank you.
I thought it was a gondola from downtown.
The gondola to the train leading to the bus.
I'm just kidding.
Thanks, Andy.
Mr. Colgan, that was a joke. Anybody else wishing to speak to this motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I will now move that the Finance Committee recommend to Council expansion of the town centre, including increase of parking fees to include Riverside Park and the boat launch opposite to the Bow River Bridge, beginning January 1st, 2024, and then I'm just going to put a period there. Okay. Now, does this, just to back up, is this sufficient wording to include the road by the boat launch? I'm going to actually include the boat launch area. Okay, opposite to the Bow River Bridge. Okay. And I'll speak in favor of this motion. That is both of those areas are incredibly busy, and they need, I think in addition to turnover, I'm hoping that this will bring a little bit more order to those areas. By making the roadway by the boat launch, paid parking, and the neighborhood there with being resident permit parking, I'm hoping that that will serve the community well there, as well as control some traffic and turnover. And over by Riverside Park, yeah, there's cars always parked in every direction whatsoever and improperly spaced. We could actually probably use a lot of order there. So I will support this motion, as I believe it will support bringing order as well as turning over of parking spots. Councillor Hillstead?
I concur.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Ma?
That parking by Riverside Park is reckless, so let's get some order there.
Councillor McCallum?
Oh, boy. Thankfully, this isn't a full budget year, because God knows what we would be seeing. Anyways, full-on gong show. So yeah, I'm in support of this, although, you know, this is not embedded in any motion, but I really hope to see some improvements to the boat launch parking, as well as some extra care taken on River Road, in particular how snow and ice is managed, and just the drainage there is not great. And perhaps a future revisit on improving that area in general, not just for the visitors that are going to be parking there, but for the residents that live there already. Thank you.
Councillor Graham?
I too will be supporting this motion. Who knew council could be so fun?
It's not always fun.
Not always fun. I too think that we need this down there. It's too busy. It's too much going on, and my hesitations were, you know, the conversations we didn't have with a certain user groups, and I would have liked to have seen those beforehand, but hopefully we can have those here in the near future, as well as the impacts to the residents and this kind of spillover effect of what that might mean. And I think as long as we keep a good handle on that and a close eye on it, then I think we can manage that. And I will be looking to infrastructure improvements in those two areas over the next while, if at all possible.
I would like to speak to your comments around the public engagement for these sorts of things. You know, with the odors that were coming, or that were coming and hopefully will be prevented now because of what we've approved, you know, with the odors coming from the wastewater treatment plant, it affected the neighborhood. But we didn't have a public engagement as to how to fix that problem, because it's technical. Traffic is also technical. Road maintenance is technical. There's a problem to be solved as part of our network, that pipeline. And, you know, I think we'd be in big trouble if every time there was some change to roadways that there was public engagement around it. I'm not saying that public engagement's bad, but there's a time and a place for it. And we're not talking about a change of use in the sense that, you know, people can park there now, and there's parking problems, and there's roadways. It's just about how to manage that flow. And that is an expertise. And so I don't concur with what you had stated there.
Mayor Krauser, if I may, just add on to that. I think it's a great question. And I guess just what I wanted to say is that as far as public engagement around our paid parking program, there's been lots done. So it started with the creation of the parking management plan. From there, we started at Quarry Lake. We tried something. We did a ton of engagement and came up with a different program. And what was going to be implemented in the town center was changed greatly because of that, learnings from Banff, what we learned from the community. So now we have an established program, and I don't think that there's an opportunity to make any changes to it, which is why we wouldn't go out and ask anything. But where we are now has come from a lot of public engagement.
Yeah, it's operational now.
Yes.
And it's a matter of how to best operate, you know, right.
And I think we would take that feedback from those user groups to make the program better in those events, right?
People can always comment. I'm just saying that we shouldn't be making a decision on whether there's paid parking on that street based on the feedback. We need to be managing traffic.
I concur.
Mayor Krauser, if I may, I would just like to point out that when we first initiated paid parking and the residential permit programs, you'll remember in Rundleview there was a lot of feedback in Rundleview and in Peaks of Grassy from residents about how the changes we made had impacted them. And we did work quite diligently to address those comments and concerns and feedback as it arose. And I don't see the expansion of paid parking or resident permit areas into new areas being handled any differently. We're abiding by our own policy and guidelines, and when we hear concerns from the community that we feel can be addressed through adjusting the program, we'll do so.
And that's the same.
And we've done it in the
you know, a
past.
sign could be used at this corner, or you know, we have people cutting through here, you know, and
Yeah,
you know,
so-
addressing those things operationally.
Yes, so for example, with Quarry Lake, I think some of the changes we made, and Adam, you would remember some of this as well, were things like expanding the area for the residential permit zones in Peaks of Grassy. I think we improved the signage in Rundleview, and we also improved some of our communication to residents. So we do actively respond to the concerns as they come up. I don't know if you have anything to add, Adam.
Okay, so I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole anymore, because we do have a motion on the table, and it's a little bit looser here because it is Finance Committee. But I think we've got the point. So would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Now we'll move to item D2. Paid parking revenue allocation model, AKA PARAM.
Yeah. Oh. All right. So you have an agenda report in front of you today that's highlighted in blue text is all the changes that have been made from the October 3rd report. So just touching base on the purpose of this PRAM is to provide a framework for decisions related to paid parking revenues. It'll set out the methodology, guidelines, rationale to a fairly and equitable distribution of the net paid parking income, which will help the self-funded program to alleviate the current and future pressures of the operating and capital budgets, as well as reserves. So what we need from you today is an approval of the principles and the methodology that will be applied to the model. And then every year at the Finance Committee deliberation meetings, the actual allocation numbers will be brought forward, and those will be approved at the onset of the 2-year budget cycle. Just to highlight on the principles that you saw earlier, the first one being cost recovery principle, which states that the full cost of parking management should be covered with the revenues of the paid parking program. Next, being the benefits and subsidies principle. So the cost of parking should be borne by those that benefit from parking, with the user pay approach being preferable rather than general taxation. This approach directs a greater share of costs to those who directly benefit and thereby reduce subsidies. So making local transit fare-free offset by parking revenues was identified as a primary strategy for parking management, and that stays. The third principle, the management of public assets principle. So the town has responsibility to appropriately manage and maintain its asset to ensure the ongoing function and benefit to the community. We have now included all transportation infrastructure assets within this principle, which includes pathways, roads, streets, transit, signage, parking assets, etc. And they represent a significant portion of our town's asset base. So the principle recognizes the cost of life cycle maintenance as well as improvements of these assets when considered, should be considered during the allocation of the net paid parking revenues. I have the next 2 slides, which are a repeat from the November 2nd capital budget meeting. You have seen this, that the estimated replacement cost for tax-supported infrastructure is somewhere around $450 million, with just roads, sidewalks, pathways, parking, and bridges alone amounts to $180 million. And the next slide showed, based on our asset management model, the annual contributions that are required in the next 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, and up to 50 years. And the graphs are for the expenses and contributions comparisons for the 10 years and the 25 years in front of you. So the proposal that administration is recommending is paid parking revenues be allocated in the following manner. The first being based on the cost recovery principle, the paid parking revenues will first and foremost offset direct costs associated with the paid parking operations. Next would be the transit services. It's recommended that it will continue to cover a portion of transit costs, which otherwise would have been covered by user fees or tax funded. So we are recommending that a fixed amount for each fiscal year for transit operations be approved within the 2-year budget process. That will direct the paid parking net income with a threshold, which is newly added, of up to 50% of the net paid parking income allocated towards transit. The rationale behind this 50% is to allow an equitable balance of operating and capital contributions, which I'll speak to and even demonstrate in a chart later as to why it's the most feasible way to move forward. Next is the contribution to reserve. This is the existing reserve and the usage that it's meant for. Council had approved a program-specific paid parking reserve to fund improvements in areas where paid parking has been implemented, to fund fare-free transit services, to fund off-site parking-related infrastructure. So administration is proposing a change to the name and the description of the reserve, keeping everything as is. This way it will broaden the usage based on the principles that outlined earlier. The paid parking program has changed since inception, and strategies from the integrated parking management plan are now being applied broadly throughout the community. So what this does is it'll all include the integrated transportation plan encompassing the lot that's maintained on focus on the parking. As well, it'll give administration some leeway on funding sources on any strategy and strategic priorities that are meant for integrated transportation planning, such as intercept parking for bicycles, events, wayfinding signages, financial incentives, designs, enhancements that come out of the town center plans. So it's a broader scope and a broader usage. So the name being revised to Integrated Transportation Management Reserve, and the usage being to fund strategies of the Integrated Parking Management Plan, including but not limited to transit operations and infrastructure, parking infrastructure, maintenance and rehabilitation, and complete streets infrastructure, including enhancements to the town center. I tried memorizing, it was hard. That's good. All right. So the recommendation is a share of net paid parking income be allocated to this reserve to fund future maintenance and replacement rehabilitation of existing assets, as well as to fund improvements. What this also will do is help close the gap that you see every time we bring forward in the budget presentations that exist between reserve contributions and anticipated life cycle maintenance needs. The next would be the allocation towards the Town Center Grant Program. Last year, Council directed administration to develop a Town Center Grant Program with consultation with BIA. The Town Center Grant Program was established, and BIA can apply for the funding to support the delivery of projects, programs, or initiatives that enhance the Canmore Downtown Center in ways that are aligned with Council's strategic plan and other guiding documents. So the recommendation is that a grant funding be determined as part of the 2-year budget approval process. Any unspent grant funds will be set aside in this particular reserve for future grant program needs. This, another little note is this grant program has the potential to advance recommendations from the downtown ERP. There are other significant capital costs outside this grant program as well, and therefore this grant program should not be used where there's recurring operating costs or impact to municipal taxes in the future years. And lastly, for allocation to the Rocky Mountain Heritage Foundation, as co-owners of the Quarry Lake, 50% of the net paid parking revenue attributable for just that area would be paid to the foundation, subject to the final executed agreement, which will come to council when finalized. This is an amount that will vary each year based on the expenses and revenues for just the Quarry Lake operations. And currently, I think town administration is still working with the foundation for the agreement to be developed between the parties. Oh, question.
Thank you, Pelkey. Ms. Biswa, I'm wondering why we're taking two very different approaches. BIA is under a grant program, and Rocky Mountain Heritage Foundation is under a different program. So
Rocky
why the
Mountain
two
Heritage
approaches?
Foundation are 50% owners of the land. So the approach is very different because they are, it's a shared ownership. Unlike the BIA, which is not about ownership, it's about where people are doing business. As a legal entity, the Heritage Foundation has a legal right to the proceeds. So we believe a very different approach is needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Getting into the financial impact for 2023, this is just an illustrative example of how the allocation would work. So based on revenues and expenses as at September 30th, we've done some projections to the end of the year, and we're expecting revenues of $1.9 million, as you saw in the financial report that came on October 31st. Therefore, a net income of $1.45 million after the expenses have been accounted for. Council last year had approved a 33% of the total transit requisition, which equated to $685,000. That was allocated from paid parking towards transit, as well as a $50,000 was approved for the town center grant program. So based on the PRAM, to allow for approximately equal split between operating and capital contributions, we are recommending that after giving out $50,000 to Rocky Mountain Heritage Foundation, again, those numbers are based on 23 budget, will vary once the actuals come in after year end, to allocate the remaining amount into the Integrated Transportation Management Reserve. This will allow funding for infrastructure maintenance and replacement in support of the Integrated Parking Management Plan, including transit operations in the future. Questions?
Thank you, Ms. Biswa. So we've just increased the downtown parking fee, and yet we didn't increase the...
Wait for it.
Yeah,
Wait for it.
Never mind, I will hold on.
Okay, this is just 23. And I believe, Councillor Wade, you had a question on how are we going to allocate the 23 revenues. This is how we're going to allocate the 23 revenues. Okay. Okay. So then 2024 financial impact. So you can discard this slide, but I just want to talk in case if there's no fee increase, and how would the allocation look like. So now we see that the transit requisition has had a bit of an increase, as you heard in the morning, by about approximately $300,000, of which $270,000 is the base requisition, and $30,000 is the new regional Route 3 cost, making a total of $1,030,245 increase to the transit requisition. So the proposal, if we were to take exactly this amount, it equates to 71.1% of the net income, and the reserves contribution sits at 22%. This is not the 33% of the transit requisition. It turns into 42% of the total transit requisition. So therefore, PRAM proposal, we should not be recommending this particular allocation, because it should not exceed 50% of the net income of the transit being allocated to transit. It should be more equitable balance of 50-50 into reserves and transit. Okay. Now with the fee increase, sorry, did you have a question?
I think I still have a question.
Why don't we wait till there's one more slide?
Okay.
You can do it.
So now with the fee increase,
This is why I like to set up this way.
Sorry.
yeah, no worries. So approximately, as per with consistent usage, we had come up with a number of 625,000-ish of increase in revenue based on the fee increases you just approved. If that gets added on to the revenues of that becomes $2.5 million, expenses at $451,000, the net income is just over $2 million. With that, we can support the increase in the transit allocation, and it's just under 50% of the net income, as well as the remaining is going to the reserve. So as you can see on the slide, as well as $50,000 to the town center grant program, and a fee of $50,000 to the, approximately $50,000 to the foundation. Questions? Okay.
Councillor Graham, do you have a question?
I do. So the town center grant program in 2023 was $50,000. And the town center grant application in 2024 is also $50,000, and yet we just increased fees in the downtown core. Why have we not increased the budget to the town center grant program?
We've already approved a budget for this year, and so if there's an amendment that would want to be made, that would be how to do it. This is just an illustration of how it would potentially fall out, and then with the fee increase, showing where there could be additional funds to reserve, but it very well could be elsewhere.
So the first column shows what was approved last year for 2024. So 50,000 was approved.
Sure, we've already approved this.
Yes.
And that's what we're going with at this point in time.
Yeah, we also haven't had a request from the BIA to increase that. I think we've developed parameters with them for how those funds would be utilized, and I think the way it's set up so that we can carry over funds. You know, in 2024 there'd be $100,000 for I guess that grant program that could be utilized, or it could continue to accumulate year over year.
I'll also add to that, I think the other nuance here was mentioned by Ms. Biswas, is that some of the reason for the recommendation to the contribution to reserve is also to be able to do some potential capital work that might come out of the downtown ARP that wouldn't be done by the BIA. So while the money may not go directly to the town center grant program, by contributing to reserve, we may be able to help fund other projects that would benefit in the area. So, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Faubert?
Thank you, Ms. Biswas. Oh, I'll just pull this closer. Under the Integrated Transportation Management Reserve, when we talk about maintenance and rehabilitation, maintenance, is that operational or capital projects?
Capital.
Capital,
More
okay,
so, yes.
perfect. And then I think that's my only question. Thank you.
Good question. Councillor Hill said?
Back to the potential fee increase, again, I know it's illustrative. Because we've also increased now the paid parking at Quarry, do we expect the $50,000 fee payable to Rocky Mountain Heritage Fund to go up? Because I would assume yes, but again, there's all those things involved, so just, again, we probably don't have a ballpark right now, but.
We don't.
Which isn't that important to me, I was.
Yeah, but that likely would change.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. The draft agreement, which is still with them for comment, which they're working on, is there's a formula for how much we get net our expenses. And so, yes, we could, with that increase, we would expect that what they would get would increase, but we haven't done that math yet.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
So, on the agreement with the Rocky Mountain Heritage Foundation, there hasn't been any direction given by council in that regard, has there? I don't believe so.
No, so where we're at in the process is we were having internal meetings with them and came to a point where we had agreement around what could go in a draft agreement.
Yeah.
We've drafted that agreement and sent it to them. They now have it and are doing their review on it. When we administratively with them get to a point where we're all in agreement and comfortable, we will bring it to council for approval.
Before executed?
Before executing.
Okay. Because what I was going to ask is, would this be if we approve this principle and it states that basically the principle is 50% of net paid parking revenue attributable to Quarry Lake operations would be paid to Rocky Mountain Heritage Foundation. That would be the principle in which it's being drafted.
Correct.
Okay, so that would be good. Okay, excellent. Any other questions on this report and the PRAM model? PRAM. Okay, seeing none, I am then going to move that the Finance Committee recommend to Council to approve the paid parking revenue allocation model, PRAM, as presented. I'm going to speak in favor of this motion. It's taken me a while to get here because I have to admit that my starting point was that paid parking, subject to contribution to town center, subject to the Rocky Mountain Heritage Foundation, was going to be paying for free transit. But I have been convinced that in fact that is perhaps a little short-sighted in that we have to make sure that we're making contributions to reserve, and if we're not making it through here, we have to trust that we're making it elsewhere. Those are often easier to if we have some sort of a model that this is always going towards, it helps protect those reserve funds, I think. And so I'm prepared to support this, recognizing that it's ultimately not passed until it's passed by council, but at this moment, I think I can support this, and my thinking has evolved enough to include those reserve contributions, despite my original expectations. Councillor Hillstead.
I'm happy to support this. Again, speaking to the this paying for fare-free transit, like originally, from what I remember when we were doing that, was to cover the fare box portion of the fare-free transit, which is a much smaller number than what we're currently contributing to it. So I'd say right now we're doing way more than what we had ever planned or envisioned with this. So I think we're doing a lot of good things with it, and I think the transit side of it's actually getting way more than I ever thought. Like, again, I always thought it was just going to be, you know, whatever the fare box was, that was our goal, but luckily we were able to surpass that. So I think a lot of the improvements that we've looked at and that we've funded through this have been awesome, and I'm just happy that we could do it. And I think this model continues that work and also builds in, because again, there's a lot of infrastructure as we've seen, and so we're going to pay it some way, somehow. So this just, again, goes to helping with that. So for how it was originally envisioned back previous council, we've knocked out of the park as far as I'm concerned, and we've gone above and beyond and made it even better. So yeah.
Well, that's an excellent point. I guess I would have seen that as a starting point, and I saw this as a method by which we could expand transit a lot quicker. So I'm comforted by the fact that paid parking has been very successful and looks to increase in its revenue, and that hopefully that will help fund increased service. But it is a little bit different. Councillor Mira.
I thank Councillor Hillstead for bringing that point forward, and that's where my headspace was too. It was to fund the fare box, and then it's, of course, we've expanded, which is wonderful. I was also comforted in knowing that when it first came out, and I know we've evolved and sort of done some amendments to it, that it will also fund some capital projects in the areas where the money is collected. Yep. So that sort of makes me feel comforted, because that was the main focus in the previous council, and I'd like to stay on that path, so I will support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to speak?
I turned it off. That's what I did. I turned it off. I'm going to speak in favor of the recommended motions, and I really want to express my gratitude to administration for bringing this back with these changes. I really particularly like that there's a percentage threshold around the transit allocation. I think that helps me understand, you know, setting a parameter around how much we use for transit. I like the, and that's, you know, transit and free transit was the start of this, right? And I think that free transit or transit, better, improved transit, is part of our integrated transportation management plan. And so by expanding the use of this funds for projects that align with the integrated transportation management plan, we improve our overall system with a focus on the areas where we have paid parking. And I think that really aligns with principally how we got started on this. I also like that instead of eliminating the paid parking reserve and moving the money to asset replacement, we're changing the name of the parking reserve and refining the usage to recognize that the infrastructure for our transportation system, its replacement has to be paid for. And what I imagined when it was just going into the reserve for asset replacement, it wasn't clear enough to me that it would be directly connected to transportation. Because I imagine, like, we have, you know, every road we own or have in this town will need to be replaced one day. And that's part of that long-term financial strategy, is making sure we are planning for that replacement. And what I see the paid parking money doing is not just is not being used to replace that road, but when we replace that road is better. And we include things in the replacement of that road that improve our overall transportation system. And so and that's why the last time this was here, I kind of spoke about improvements versus just replacing things. And I think those things can combine. You can replace something and improve it at the same time. And what I saw with this is it needed to be very much connected to the transportation management. And so that's what has come back to us. So I think that really has, that admin's done a really good job of listening to where council mind was headed in terms of these funds. And I think that another thing that is really important to remember is that if in the future things change again, we can change this policy, right? If in the future we have want a different arrangement with the BIA, we could change the policy, and that's totally possible. And then we're not the only people debating what paid parking revenue should be used for. I noted in the newspaper today, there's a story around Banff debating their paid parking and using it potentially for climate change initiatives. So, I think the robust debate about how this money, this revenue source, as well as the program, which is new to our community, is really starting to build a foundation of success for paid parking in Canmore. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments around this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. I'll now move that the Finance Committee direct administration to return to Council with a revised reserves policy, FIN 007, to change the name and description, usage of the paid parking reserve. Okay, so I've made it, instead of just usage in brackets, revised to change the name, comma, description, and usage of the paid parking reserve. Would anybody like to speak to that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. So we're at the end of the formal presentations around the amendments to the 2024 budget. We will be getting more information next time around, in answer to the motion made about the 2.3%. We're also going to get information coming back around the fruit trees.
Yep, so we're preparing a presentation for you on a number of questions that you've had so far, including fruit trees and a list of reductions. Okay. So I will try to send you, we won't have a formal report. There'll be just an agenda, I'm assuming, and some minutes that go out. But I will try to send you the finalized PowerPoint by the end of the day tomorrow. We may need to still continue to tweak some numbers, but just so that you have a sense of what's coming. So on Tuesday when we meet, we'll walk you through all the answers to the questions and the 2.3%. It's actually a little more than that we can offer as like an a la carte menu for reductions, and then it'll be over to you for deliberation. So I don't think the presentation part won't take very long on Tuesday, maybe an hour with the presentation and questions, and then the rest of the time is your deliberation and direction.
So we have about 4-ish hours of deliberation so we can deal with various motions that people have that can come forward at that time. If there's anything that's burning that somebody felt that they wanted to deal with today, if it could take a few minutes, I suggest we don't stay long enough that we have to come back from a lunch break. So does anybody need to deal with anything today, or it can all be? Yes. Yeah. It would be helpful if you know you're going to be bringing in a motion, share it so we can start to think about it, or if any additional information might be needed to support that. If it's not something that's already being addressed, that'd be great. Does that sound good with everyone? Yeah. Nodding heads. Okay. All right, then I move that we adjourn. All those in favor? Carried unanimously.
Okay.
3 extra hours in the day?
Oh, no, no.
Yes,
Oh,
please.
Take them. Okay, thank you.
They're canceling.
Did you want any of this back, Karen?
She still got some in the bag.
Oh, okay. Okay, there we go. Thanks. No, no, I'm good. I'm good. No, no, thank you. Oh, what are those, strawberries? Oh, they look very sugary.
Those are better.
Thank you.
I'm getting Andy a bus.
That's the one I'm looking for. Just so that you know what
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
bringing
Yeah.
forward. And I've got, those are my, just
got
my
some
figures.
math.
Yeah, got lots of math, lots of math, and you already saw this.
Yeah.
So, Sean Tonagin,
Pardon?
and I know you're on your way, I used to have a friend named Sean,
Okay.
and he was Belgian, and we used to call him Sean Tonagin, because that's what his grandmother called him.